Darin, sitting here in your Samford University Center of Sports Analytics lab, this is geeking out. Okay. People who listen to this are podcasts are coaches, parents, athletes, administrators. Did you ever think data analytics would be like this?
No. When I, back in the day when I was an undergrad at Birmingham Southern, I loved math. And so I was an athlete who loved math, which was kind of a little weird.
Pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was back in the 90s, and I had no clue that, so when I was a kid growing up, pretty much the only math in sports were the stats you read on the back of the baseball card, and so then, I would, even as I would watch the Braves, we would watch every single game, growing up, and I had a little scorebook.
Had to be suffering there for a while.
Oh yeah, they were terrible. But I would have a scorebook and, do all the stats and all that and everything. But that was pretty much it, back until really just the last 5 or 10 years, really. So.
Yeah. Did you? Let's talk about business. Let's talk about analytics. When I talk about analytics, I'm going to include both business and performance and injury and all that other stuff, and we can go there. What has opened the doors in the athletic spectrum to data? Because if we look at the Los Angeles Dodgers, a lot of their decisions are being made by upstairs. We were talking before we started airing. Frank Reich is on the phone, or he's on the headset with a data guy.
Right.
My golfers on the PGA Tour are very data-centric. Mm-hmm. Baseball has been that way, football, and now all of a sudden load management and basketball.
Right.
What's been what happened?
Yeah, well, it's a couple of things. First, the technology's advanced to where that we have the tools necessary to turn that data into actionable intelligence. Because data data in itself is not really valuable. We have to find a way to actually turn it into actionable intelligence in whatever context we're talking about. That's one of the things that we're trying to do here at the Center for Sports Analytics. And so that's one. The other one is the way data is collected now. There's so much data being collected now that 10 years ago was not being collected. So there's a common saying that say if you were to take all the data that's ever been collected in the history of the world and put all of that data into one big warehouse, 90% of what you find in that warehouse would have been created in the last 24 months.
Really?
So, yeah. So if you think about that, 90% of all the data ever created in the history of the world has been created in the last 24 months. And that's continuing to go upwards in terms of it's just going to continue to grow. In other words, we're not going to be collecting less data. And so the amount of data that we now have access to is, most people don't realize that we're living in a time where it's really a data revolution, similar to the Industrial Revolution. We're in a similar sort of time right now in history, and I think people will look back 100 years from now and go, "Wow, that was a really transformative 10, 15, 20 years, that the world went through when we finally started realizing the value of data as we collected so much of it and figured out how to utilize it in positive ways." So
as a psychologist, I'm always looking, as we were talking, marketing. Yeah. Business analytics is very psychological. It's data. A lot of psychology is data.
Yeah.
Psychologists started as psychometricians, doing testing.
Right.
And so I got into this idea, but when I say got into this with absolutely no understanding what the hell I'm getting into.
Right.
But I had a guy in my office who shared an article about Las Vegas. And there was a casino that had a bank of slot machines that were female-centric. Dirty Dancing, Grease, all this. And the logic was set it outside where the dance review was. And it was like a Coyote Ugly dance review. It was heavy male-centric. The idea was the men will go in and watch the jazzed up, maybe a little risque, and then the women will stand outside and then they'll meet up afterwards. Their wives can play. What they found was that those slot machines were making no money during certain times of the day. So they put RFD chips in the people's room keys.
Oh, okay.
And they could heat map and watch where people were going. And what they found was the women were staying away from the vaudeville show, not vaudeville, burlesque show.
All right.
Because it was like the lions exiting the cave, and the women were like, "Oh, heck no." And they were on the other side of the casino. And those casinos, those slot machines were empty. Mm-hmm. So whenever the show was going on, they were getting no play. What they did was by watching the heat mapping, they moved those female-centric to the other side near the spa, near the coffee shop, and their revenues went through the roof.
Right.
And then they added male-centric ones around that, certain table games.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, there's something to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess now Disney with the bands.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and sports teams now are doing the same thing, tracking where where the fans are, during the game. Like when you walk into the stadium, what's that path look like? Where do you spend your time? Where do you go? What restroom do you go to? Which concession? Whatever. I mean, there's a lot of mapping of the fan movements within the game, and from that, there's been quite a number of great fan engagement strategies, that teams are developing ways to, because that's one of the big struggles right now in sports is ticket sales are declining all across sports. And so sports properties are really, really concerned about that and wanting to figure out how do we convince someone to get off the couch with all this great content that you now have at your fingertips.
Yeah,
on your
I'd
phone
rather sit in here and watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, with this massive television.
So we have to give a better experience, and so again, the smart teams are utilizing that same sort of an idea. That to really understand the fans at a deeper level to develop better fan engagement strategies.
So most people will laugh about saying, "Hey, we're talking about blankets," and then 30 minutes later on my Facebook is there ads for okay. But that's what the sports teams are doing. They're watching how you're what you're searching. They're watching how you connect and putting that together.
Right. Particularly if you go to a sporting event and your phone is on their Wi-Fi, which a lot of times you don't even know what your phone is on their Wi-Fi. Yeah. That gives them the ability to track quite a bit about what you're doing. When you're actually in that stadium. How much time are you on social? Which apps are you on? Are you just on and on and on it goes. And so when taken in aggregate, I know it sounds kind of creepy to think that they know about me individually, but it's really when you take that data on aggregate and start looking for trends, that's when you get really valuable insights that allow you to develop better fan experiences, in the future. And so that's a big trend.
It's kind of like watching the marketing of college sports with the explosion of video and creative for social. So we just had signing day as we're recording this. Yeah. And there was this big discussion about who had the best graphics. And I mean, you just can't miss it. It's engaging. Yeah. Baylor had puppets. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't.
Oh, you've got to look at it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And the reason is because people are sitting there at their desk checking their phone.
Yeah.
And engaging.
Yeah.
You go to a game and they can target, I'm sure, ads at you or information.
Right.
Do you think the betting world is going to tap into that even more?
Oh,
with
sure.
it being legal?
Yeah, so with legalized gambling, that's a big win from a fan engagement perspective. That's opening the door for all sorts of ways, again, to engage the fans, to bring them into the game in a new and different and deeper way that they can't get necessarily on their couch. And so they have to come to the game to do that. And so that's but again, we're right on the edge of that, of that happening. And so there are a lot of everybody's sort of struggling with trying to figure that out right now. But all of this, also on the backside of all that, there's all this data that's being created, and there's value in that data. And so we work with a number of different organizations that collect data just through, like, for example, here in Birmingham, there's a company called Clutch, which is a kind of like the Airbnb of parking. At game day. It's a new company. They won all kind of awards. And so we were just meeting with them the other day, talking to them about some of the data that's being collected just through them doing their normal thing that they're doing, and then trying to think about how can that data be utilized in a way that's positive for the fans and for the properties. And so
I'm sitting here thinking, can I apply? Because I made a D in quantitative business analysis at LSU my junior year because I wasn't paying attention because I couldn't understand honestly, I lost engagement with it. I was a business student before I became a psychology guy, and I lost engagement with it because I couldn't understand what queuing at a Burger King. That was what we kept using.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really care. Like if it's Wendy's model, if you're listening to this, you're thinking McDonald's has an open approach.
Right.
Burger King has you in a queuing system, and Wendy's does too, and which is better. And I'm like, but I'm so fascinated with it now, maybe because I'm more mature about it.
Yeah.
But what I'm sitting here thinking is you're sitting on the tip of data that is shaping human behavior in a way that people don't have any idea they're being shaped. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating and a little scary.
A little scary
as well, but from my perspective, it is super fascinating. And so, for example, we spend quite a bit of time studying massive amounts of social data. And so, for example, this past semester, my students worked on a project with the Atlanta Braves, and they have roughly 1.3 million people that follow them on Twitter. And so we were able to go out and capture all 1.3 million of those people, who they are, and know, not only who they are, but everybody else that they follow. And then all kinds of other things about their social content, again, in aggregate. And then taking that, you can imagine, we're talking billions of data points, and using that data, you can, the insights that you can, come back with are just, it's truly remarkable.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
And so, for example, the Braves, we used a segmenting tool to take their 1.3 million fans and segment them into clusters of what we call interest-based clusters. And so, for example, the Braves have a cluster of fans that love country music, and so then we're able to dig into who those people are and what they love, and then go back to the Braves and say, okay, here's who they are. Now, if you want to activate with this group, if you want to, here's some strategies or ideas. Here's how you connect with them on social. Here's what you do in the ballpark to engage these people. And these are, data-driven decisions that are being made. They're not guessing. They're not guessing, well, we may have some country music fans,
right,
and I wonder if we try this, if this would work. We know these things will work because we know who they are, in terms of their social behavior.
I went to Augusta National this year to watch one of my players play, and I was fascinated by, when you get on those grounds, you got their app. They know where you are. They know where your player. I mean, it's really, which makes sense. I mean, Augusta's the creme de la creme of people running tournaments because of where they are in multiple levels of business.
Yeah.
But it made the experience so much better. At first I thought, this is going to be kind of creepy there. But it made it so much better because you're over on 12, but you could figure out what was going on at 2.
Right.
That's interesting.
And they can feed you content. First of all, they know what sort of content resonates with you. So they already know what you like, and they can feed you then content that improves that experience for you, personalized to you at the right moments that matter, depending on what's going on in the context of the golf tournament at that point in time. So it overall, you're the winner in all that. You end up much more satisfied because you get the information you want to have when you want it, and it improves your ultimate experience. And so that's
when did this start?
So, good question. Everybody,
because Bill James, I think about in baseball. James, Bill James? It was the original baseball prospectus guy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Bill, and then Moneyball with Billy Beane.
So normally what I'd say is, there was always been stats, particularly in baseball.
Yeah.
There's always been statistics and all that, but Moneyball is really when it took off. Billy Beane and the whole, which is 20 years ago, something like that. That's when it really, I think people really started recognizing the power of data and statistics and analytics to really shape. And, of course, this was on-field performance that we were talking about, right? And so that's where it started. It was really in baseball and really where it's taken off. And so baseball has always sort of been out front, but now it's moved from the field over onto the business side, which is, again, kind of what we specialize here in Samford, is the business side of sports and using analytics to, again, drive greater fan engagement, to help brands like Coca-Cola achieve their marketing objectives when they're marketing to the sport environment. That's sort of what we do. And so you have the business side, you've got the team and player performance side, and then increasingly you've even got the medical side.
Yeah.
So there's so much medical data being created, the heart rates and all of that. And so those are sort of the 3 areas where analytics is hitting sports, and it's moved at different paces. As is typically the case, the professional sports leagues are about a decade ahead of college sports, which is true in almost every facet of, at least on the business side of sport, you see that being the case, and it's definitely true on the analytics side. If you see, like, for example, the Hawks have they have probably 10 to 15 people that do nothing but business analytic type work. You look at a big university like Michigan or Alabama, they don't have anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
Most of them are just hiring their first person, matter of fact, in business analytics. So you see that as the case. But anyway, so where did it start? I would say it started with Moneyball. It's on the team performance side, but it's now jumped into these other areas, and it's jumping across sports too.
So for you, it started. You were a college soccer player,
right?
Then you decide, I want to do retail marketing.
Yeah.
And get my doctorate in retail marketing.
Yeah.
What led to that? Because
so I ended up I was I always knew I wanted to be a professor.
Okay.
I wanted to be in an academic environment. I just loved the academic environment. It's I came to a college campus when I was 18 and I never left.
Yeah, that's all right.
And I love investing in young people.
I felt like when I went to a college campus at 18, I was ABD for a while. I felt like I had never left either until I finally finished my dissertation.
Yeah.
Okay.
But really what motivated me is I wanted to be in a profession where I could impact people.
Okay.
And there's no better profession than being a college professor. You have just so much opportunity to shape young lives. And so that's really what motivated me to kind of go this direction. But so I ended up doing my PhD in marketing strategy and then did a lot of stats classes along the way too. In essence, a minor in statistics because just like you, if you do a PhD in psychology, you're going to take a lot of stats.
Yes. Yeah.
And so same thing in marketing because it's the same way. But and so that's sort of the path I went.
How did you go? How did the sports? Because what I hear, the reason I'm leading with this question is, I get emailed daily. Mm-hmm. You probably do too. I love sports. I want to work in sports somehow.
Oh, yes. Yep.
I guess my question is what do you tell them? Because everybody wants to be in sports.
Yeah.
Like Brett Basham, who's here, is always like, if you really love sports, because he's worked in sports, don't work in sports.
Yeah.
Because you don't get to go to the game and enjoy it like you used to. You're seeing it from a different angle.
Yeah.
So what do you tell people? Because let's be honest, you're living a dream.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You're right.
You're working at the Atlanta Hawks. All right, I got to go to a Braves game.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
You're right. I get asked that all the time, constantly. And so we developed a program here at Samford. We launched it in 2012, a program in sports marketing, and we intentionally embedded it in our business school because, again, this is sort of the changing nature of the world of sports. Sports is now about revenue generation. Mm-hmm. If you want to work in the front office of a professional sports team, and increasingly even in college athletics as an AD, you better have a business background. You better understand accounting and finance and all that. Gone are the days that the player retires to the front office. Those days are gone. Now, sports is about revenue generation. And so therefore, if you're going to get employed by sports organizations, you need to have a business degree. And so the University of Oregon was actually the first school that sort of recognized this back about 20 years ago, and they launched the Warsaw Center for Sports Marketing, and it's with Nike money and all that. And they're still to this day, I would consider them the Harvard of sports marketing. But that program is an MBA program. So we basically 10 years ago took their concept and have built the same thing here on the undergrad level at Samford University, and started it in 2012. And since we've launched the program, we've actually placed over 90% of our students in the industry, which I'm super proud of.
That's ridiculous.
Because this is the hardest industry by far to get a job in.
And not only that, you've placed them as undergrads.
Right, as undergrads.
Which is really remarkable because you're not weeding them out per se. I've always looked at grad school as kind of a weeding out, like how serious are you?
Yeah.
How bad do you want this to go spend 2 more years in school?
So to some degree, we actually do weed them out.
Okay.
So they have to apply, the students here have to apply at the end of their sophomore year to get into the program. And we keep it, it's 10 to 15 students per class is all we take. Average GPA probably 3.7, 3.8. And so the students that get into the program, they want it, and they want it bad, and we're sort of screening for that, if you will. And so then that junior and senior year, they're doing every semester they're doing different experiential sport business activities. For example, the 10 seniors that are in the program right now just finished a 6-month project for Coca-Cola sports marketing. And so 2 weeks ago, we went over to Atlanta, and we actually went over a day early, and we presented to the front office of the Atlanta Braves, because we have a partnership with them, a mentoring partnership with them, to kind of get ourselves ready. And then the next day, we went and did it for real to all the sport marketing department at Coca-Cola. And, and this was my students' work, and it was all analytics, had analytics, packed with analytics that ultimately led to strategic recommendations for how Coke specifically can, in this case, could use their soccer and football assets, NFL, MLS, U.S. Men's Women's National Team, ESPN College Game Day. How do we leverage those to recruit the next generation of drinkers, to be Coca-Cola loyal? And so that was the project. And so my students are doing that sort of work every single semester. So by the time they graduate, their resume looks pretty impressive.
They look like an MBA.
Oh yeah. And so which is why we've placed 90% of our kids.
Yeah.
And so in fact last week,
do you take kids that have already graduated bachelor's to come back and get a second bachelor's?
I've never had that. I haven't had that happen.
The reason
yet.
I'm asking is because I know, listening to this,
Yes, yeah.
there's going to be somebody who's going to listen to this and go,
Yeah.
I'm a senior at XYZ University.
Yeah.
And I want exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So in that case, my recommendation would be to take a look at either the University of Oregon, because again, they've got that great MBA program out there, or the University of South Florida. They have a really good sport business MBA program. Those are the two. And I've had a number of my kids actually gone on to those two programs, and they've all done really well.
Yeah.
In fact, the one that went to Oregon is now the senior marketing manager for the Portland Trailblazers.
Wow.
And, the two that have gone to down to Tampa, one is working for the Lightning, and another one is working for the New Jersey Devils. So they've done very well as well going on to that.
Wow.
Program. Now most of my kids though don't go on for their MBA because they can get jobs with what they've got, and so which is another question I get asked a lot is, do you need an MBA to work in sports? And the answer is no. You need a business degree, either undergrad or MBA. So if you didn't do business on the undergrad, then yes, but if you can do it on the undergrad level, you need a business degree. And while you're getting that business degree, you've got to get relevant sports industry experience on the resume, because otherwise you will not. I mean, you could have a 4.0 from Harvard Business School, and if you have nothing sport industry on your resume, you're not going to get an interview. And so that's what we work really hard to make sure our kids are getting a great business degree and lots of relevant sports industry experience while they're here. And that's our formula for success, I guess.
That makes me want to apply. Do you ever take you ever take doctorate program people?
Yeah.
People who have doctorate degrees. When you're looking at winning, because this podcast is Secrets to Winning.
Okay.
Data comes down to it. Marketing is winning. I listened to a podcast called Business Wars. Have you ever listened to this podcast series?
Mm-mm.
I think it's very great. I think it's phenomenally done. It's very well produced. I'd be interested.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it is, but he takes systematic shifts in the business world and says, okay, let's dive into Blockbuster versus Netflix.
Okay.
And watch how Blockbuster failed. It wasn't because they couldn't keep up with the technology.
Right.
Let's look at the fight between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And what always got me when I listened to the one about Netflix and Blockbuster. At the time, Netflix was the upstart, but from his perspective, Blockbuster had Netflix on the ropes. Mm-hmm. And they made a very bad strategic decision to go back towards the brick and mortar approach by hiring.
Right.
Carl Icahn pushed one of his good buddies from 7-Eleven back into Blockbuster. But what he said they missed, which I thought was brilliant, was they said they missed what Netflix really was. They were so caught up on the delivery, they forgot that Netflix was a data collection and analyst company, that their video streaming is just the tool that they use to collect your data.
Right. Yeah. And Amazon's the same way. By
Same
the way.
way, yeah.
And so we're kind of moving into a realm, and we actually have a faculty member here, Dr. Matt Mazie, whose PhD is in strategy, and he does quite a bit in the area of big data and strategy. And so his research looks at these sorts of companies it's a new breed of company that is historically companies will develop their strategy and then use data to analyze whether or not the strategy is working or not. That's sort of their benchmark or whatever. These new companies, the Netflix, the Amazons of the world, are now allowing the data to tell them what the strategy should be. So, and it's a whole new way of sort of thinking. And so so that's, anyway, he has an entire research stream in that area. So
when you look at, we're talking about kind of the big scary aggregate of all this data, and they know more about us. We're putting, I'm not trying to go big brother here, but you're putting Amazon's Alexas in houses in the fight to put a hub in. That's a data collection tool. Is all that is, correct?
Yeah.
They're monitoring usage and everything.
Yeah. Again, my belief is that is in aggregate. That data is being, in other words.
Yeah, they're not looking at you in particular.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
What's the end game? Are we just going to are we going to remove emotion out of things? Or is there still intuition, experience that can hunch?
Yeah. Well, so, and again, you're a psychologist, so you could probably tell me, know this better than I do. But at the end of the day, human beings are still irrational beings.
Yes.
And there's a lot of randomness in our behavior and in the way just our decision making. And so, data can't predict that. So data's only going to be able to take us so far in terms of really understanding the human race and the psychology of it all and why people behave and act the way that they do. But there's no doubt it can help us understand a lot more than we currently do, for sure. But I don't, we're not robots, in other words.
Yeah.
So, right. So
I read a book called Thinking in Bets. Have you read that book?
I have not.
Okay. Annie Duke, who is the World Series of Poker champ, she was about to finish her PhD in cognitive psychology. And the cognitive psychology, and then she didn't have the money to finish her dissertation. She moved out west and started playing poker in the back rooms and used those principles. It's very data analytic, though.
Yeah.
And she uses a term called resulting, where if somebody, you and I are playing, we got the final flop. I'm not a poker player, so I'll act smart.
Okay.
Okay. And they throw the final card down, and going into it, she's like, Darin has an 86% chance of winning. Brett has a 14% chance.
Right.
They put down the flop, and I win. Many times the player like you goes,
right,
bad decision, bad luck.
Right.
And so they use that bad luck as a way to change their decision-making inappropriately.
Right.
It was the right decision.
It was, right.
How do we separate emotion? Because it's a great book, and I recommend people to read it all the time because we want to make data-driven decisions and then make an emotional decision on top of it is the way I feel.
Right.
Like, yes, I buy in. That's emotional. I bought in.
Right.
How do we separate that emotion, though?
Yeah.
When you're talking to Coca-Cola, who's like, yeah, we've never done that before.
Yeah.
How do you guide them?
Yeah. Well, so I, in my spare time, I coach soccer. I have been for years. I coach college soccer and I coach now youth soccer. And it's the same thing when it comes to coaching decisions. You look for the decision that's going to give you the best chance of having the positive outcome. But at the end of the day, you've got to rationally remember that it may still not work out because there's all kind of uncontrollable factors. And so when those events do occur, you just have to remind yourself that you did make the right decision, based on the data, and just continue to believe in that just knowing long term, you will be better off in the long term if you make data driven decisions. That doesn't mean you won't have setbacks. Doesn't mean things are going to happen, but you just have to kind of come to a faith in the data, I guess.
I made the data-driven decision. Yeah. It played itself out.
That's right.
And now I make the next decision.
That's right. Based on the same exact paradigm, even though it didn't work out last time. So yeah, that's.
Let's shift gears to a very explosive topic.
Okay.
Should we pay our college athletes?
Should we pay our college athlete? That's a great question. I did actually post to social media.
That's what got me thinking. I was like, I'm going to go there. I got to go there.
It is interesting that the post I put on social this morning to see the vast difference in opinion on that.
Yes, that's what got me.
For generations. And so the Generation Z, your current 21-year-olds and down, your college students down, are very much in favor of that idea. Our generation and older are very much not in favor of that idea. And so it's it's an interesting kind of conundrum. But I believe that we are moving to a day, that in time that's going to happen. For sure. I just think it's almost for sure going to happen. It's just we're just trying to figure it out right now. And so
I think what gets me is there is a separation between the have and have-nots in college.
Oh yeah.
And we're sitting on the Samford's campus.
That's right.
Predominant Division I athletics. Predominant Division I athletics minus football, 1AA, but extremely good. And quarterback now for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
So on. But are we going to have to see a separation where the Power Five and maybe the Group of Five, there's different rules for different ones? Because Samford, in all honesty, not going to be able to afford to pay the basketball player.
We just had that. We experienced that a few years ago when the NCAA are now allowing schools to give money over and above the cost of tuition, so they can actually write a check, and they're giving universities the opportunity even to kind of define what that amount is, and so
which to me is how they're paying them.
It's sort of a backwards way of doing it. That's right. Just and so our conference, the SoCon, all got together and said, we're not going to do that. We don't have the ability to write a $10,000 check every year for every one of our athletes. Mm-hmm. So just from a budget standpoint, we don't have that. So it's already happening. What you say, the haves and the have-nots. And so I think you're going to continue to see that separation. Which is one of the reasons you're seeing some of the mid majors. The University of Memphis, the Boise States, the UCFs of the world that are working hard, right? Houston, working very hard to try to get into that camp, and so there's all these schools are kind of on the bubble that are wanting to get in before that ship sails. They want in.
Yeah, they want in. Give me a piece.
Yeah. And so that's I think that's why you're seeing so much push, at that level to become part of the Power Five.
Do you think it's going to change? I guess it'd be an interesting question: is does it change fan engagement? Because if the strongly held opinions of people my age and older are going, oh, I'm not supporting that anymore, I'm not watching, and then the impact on ESPN, SEC Network, which I want to come back to in a minute. To me, it's like, are we going to lose them because they think that they're now spoiled, entitled, which is often the argument.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. We actually talked about that at Coke just a couple weeks ago because brands like Coca-Cola and whatnot, with the imaging rights legislation coming, I mean, that's something that companies are starting to consider. Like, how are we going to, what are we going to do with that? And one of the things that we found in our research for Coke was that, and again, we were focusing on Gen Z, but when it comes to Gen Z attaches to football differently depending on if it's pro or college. So the attachment process for a Gen Zer when it comes to the NFL is really player driven, primarily because of fantasy football.
Yeah.
And so there's a
good point.
Whereas our generation's more loyal to our team, whatever team that may be. In fact, our research actually found that when we asked who's your favorite NFL team, it was my fantasy team.
Really?
Yeah. And so there's so it's all player driven, kind of attachment process to the NFL. College is the other way around though. College is still, even with Gen Z, the attachment is to the team itself because of a great example of that if the quarterback at Georgia, who transferred to Ohio State. Well, how many Georgia fans all of a sudden, turned in their Georgia hat and are now wearing none, right?
Yeah,
none.
Very few. I would say they probably went opposite, right?
Yeah.
They felt violated.
That's right.
Like, how can you leave us?
So the loyalty is definitely at the team level, and I don't think that's going to change necessarily.
Is that an opportunity for pro sports to try to create more loyalty? I mean, because of regionalization, it used to be like, I think about like Pittsburgh Steeler fans.
Right. Yeah.
They connected to Pittsburgh Steelers because it was a coal mine, steel town.
Right. Yeah.
They were hard. The helmet matched the Union hat.
Yeah.
Now it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, people are like Atlanta. I look at Atlanta. There's so many transplants in Atlanta.
Right.
You ask them if they're Falcons fans, they're like, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go to the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm not like in the Southeast, we don't. I always say, being from Louisiana, that the Saints were always the hangover cure for the LSU game.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. So it's there's no doubt there's a difference there in terms of kind of the attachment process, and so back to the question of how does the fact that players can now, like the transfer portal, and of course I think it goes kind of both ways. Most of the examples you see when players transfer, the fan base, they're pretty bitter about it.
Yes,
for the most part. Except like in the case of Jalen Hurts. I think you've seen most Alabama fans, because of the way he handled it, the class he showed, and through that whole process, there are a lot. And I'm one of them. Again, I have my PhD from Alabama, so I'm a big Alabama fan. I am absolutely going to be pulling for Oklahoma. And I've never pulled for Oklahoma, but I'm pulling for Oklahoma this year because of Jalen Hurts.
You realize who you're talking to?
No,
LSU.
Okay. There you go.
No, but he did handle it right. I mean, it was a great lesson for everybody who was going through that process.
Yeah.
But isn't it funny though? Like with signing day, these kids flip their commitment, and these, John 1423 Booger on Twitter is beating them up for switching a commitment, but John 1416 Booger is changing jobs and we want to beat these kids up. It to me, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like the fandom psychology.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you look at in the college playoffs that's coming up, 3 of the 4 quarterbacks that are starting are transfers. Yeah. So I think it kind of worked out pretty well for them.
Oh, 100%.
So, in terms of being what's best for the athlete, I would absolutely argue the transfer portal and kind of the direction we're going is the right way to go.
Yeah. When you look at like, I did a presentation at the American Psychological Association last year. Not historically the most pro-athletic supporting in college campuses.
Right.
Okay. Sometimes knives are out and thrown. Okay. There has been this growth in the sports psychology side and the sports medicine side that's been good. But I gave this talk and I talked about the value of Nick Saban. Me working at Alabama, there's no doubt they're building, and his leadership is incredible.
Yeah.
And there was that Forbes or Fortune article that said if he was a CEO of a company, he'd be worth 3 times what he's worth.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I put the data up about the economic impact in the area, and it may have been some of your data that I plagiarized. I think I gave you credit. But there's no doubt that his impact on university, society, and infrastructure is unmistakable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even just again, on a personal level, I listen to the Hey Coach show on Thursday nights, and I often will take, concepts that leadership ideas, whatever in fact, he's very transparent, honestly, about what he does and what works and what doesn't work. And so, so I know, he's affected my life personally, even in terms of just the way he sees the world, his, again, leadership styles and all that. So no doubt that he's had a tremendous impact on our state in many positive ways.
Do we look? So I guess that leads to a question about analytics of firing a coach. USC decides to keep Clay Helton.
Right.
Signing day, USC comes in at 78.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
Yes. Analytically, they should have gotten rid of him.
Yeah.
If he was a CEO, he'd have been gone.
Right. Yeah. So that's so what analytics do you look at, though? That would be the question. Is like, what analytics would we look at? Like right now, if we were going to predict which coaches should be gone 6 months from now, that's sort of the research question. Like, what data do we look at? What data is is most predictive of of a coach doing a good job, of a coach being successful? And is it wins and losses, or in this case, it's recruiting success, right? So
which is kind of the fans feeling excited during a downtime. Yeah, feeling hopeful about the future.
Right. I.e. Lane Kiffin going to Ole Miss, for example. It was unbelievable the psychological transformation that's occurred over there, where they were so down after the way they lost the game to Mississippi State, and then literally almost a week later they're on top of the world.
And I had read that they were down $7 million in donations. So they made the call. I'm looking at Basher because he's an Ole Miss alum, but I think it was the chancellor at that moment was like, look, the trend is clear.
Yeah.
We're not going to fire up the mediocre fan base, meaning the ones that are on the fence.
Yeah.
Who are like, I'm in or I'm out. They're out.
Yeah.
They're not fired up. Now all of a sudden they got somebody new. They're like, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm on the lane train.
Yep.
So let me wrap up 2 questions here. One is, should we pay him?
Should we
pay athletes?
I would say in some way, I think we should. Yes.
Okay.
And what that looks like, I don't know, but I will say I do know. We have one of the things that we have an advisory board for our program, and we have folks that. Let's just say there's some work being done behind the scenes. To put the structure in place for that to happen. Because it's going to happen. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. So it's coming.
And the likeness thing is going to be interesting to see a Bryce Young style player on a national Coca-Cola ad. And then I'm going to be very interested to see how that works in a locker room from a dynamic when one player's got all the attention, because that's what's going to be. It's going to be the top. Right. It's going to be the top less than 1% of an athletic department who's getting the most benefits. Right. You're going to see athletes with a local car dealership saying, hey, you're going to go down there and run track. I'll give you a car, but I need you to do some. My concern in the long run is our athletes are not prepared for the real life conversations that are going to come out of it and some of the exploitation that's going to come out of it. Yeah. That's my concern.
Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity to then train them in the athletic department.
Right. That's right.
The last question I have is maybe open up a can of worms, and I don't mean to do it this late, but Clay Travis, the blogger from Nashville, he has been writing for some time about the cord cutting effect that you're seeing with ESPN and people streaming. Like my family now, we stream. It's not ESPN is paying a tremendous amount of money for Monday Night Football. You've got the SEC contracts coming up right now for football, and the money that's coming into that is tremendous. Are fans still engaged to that point that's driving those numbers, or are we going to see a point where we've fatigued our fan base with all this data and all this access? I mean, if you look at I used to live for every game that I could find on Major League Baseball, but now I don't even watch baseball anymore because they're on all the time and I can't. Right. I used to get so excited about Saturday baseball.
Right.
At 1:00.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, the world is changing big time in terms of the amount of sport content that is now that we have as fans access to. That's just. You and I were talking earlier. I'm a big soccer guy, so I start off my day quite often listening to a talk, the jocks of London,
I earned some credibility.
Sport.
I earned some credibility with you when I told you I'm a regular guest on Talk Sport.
I'm like, wow. So again, but that, when I was growing up, that was, in fact, when I was growing up as a soccer guy here in Birmingham, the only soccer that we had
By the way, they sent a message that they want your contact information.
Oh, awesome!
So yes,
you're my new favorite person. Literally the only soccer content I had access to as a soccer fan and player was one Saturday morning per month on what was the channel? It was some esoteric channel. Yeah. And it was Soccer Made in Germany. And that was it. I mean, that was the only soccer content anywhere on TV that you could get. And so now just think where we are. I can literally pick up my phone and watch a game in India right now if I want, or whatever. I mean, Japan, you name it. And so it's just, and that's true of all sports all across the world. And so as fans, we have so much access to so much sport content that it's really changing the way and the nature of the way that we're consuming it. And so again, back to our Coca-Cola study, we looked at people who love football versus people who love soccer. And one of the things that we found is that if you're a hardcore soccer fan, there is so much soccer content out there. I mean, when you start really thinking about the number of leagues, the number of tournaments, it's a 365-day a year, 24/7 commitment to try to keep up with what's just going on in the world of soccer. And so what we saw in the social data, when we took a look at social data of people who are hardcore soccer fans in the United States, what we found is that they're almost completely and totally focused on their sport. They don't have the bandwidth to track other sports. And so I think you're going to see more and more of that.
So it's more segmentation.
Right,
than it is generalization.
Right, and then the second trend you're going to see is more and more, particularly with the younger generation. The younger generation would much rather watch a 2 or 3 minute video, on their phone of the highlights of the game, rather than watching the whole game.
Yeah.
I've got a 15-year-old son at home, and he never watches a full. Even the Iron Bowl, he'll pop in and watch a little bit here, and then he's out, right?
Yeah.
So again, I think that's you're going to see this more, highlight type content is really what's going to drive it.
And in-stadium entertainment is going to be geared towards the very shrunken attention spans.
Absolutely, and again, that's a whole nother topic. But if you look at the way new stadiums are being designed, they look very, very different. I mean, what's really happening is you're seeing they say in the next 10 years you're going to see the tailgating activities, which all the socialization around sport, because 99% of people who go to a sporting event go with someone else.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a social experience, and so what you're starting to see is more and more teams are bringing the tailgating experience into the stadium. And and it's really fascinating. Some of the things. I mean, I don't know if you've been over to
the new Mercedes Dome.
That's a great example. Or SunTrust Park. You've got the whole battery that's built around it, and it has the feel of even being in the stadium, even when you're in the battery, because they've got the game on, and all that. And so it's fans do not want to go to the game and sit in one seat next to two people for the whole game. They want to get up. They want to socialize.
Well,
they want to
We're going to the semifinal game with a friend.
Oh yeah.
And they gave us. He called and said, "I got tickets from a vendor," and my wife's like, I don't want to go to a football game. And then he called and said, "Oh, they're in the club seat in the 50-yard line." She's like, club seat, looks up. She goes, "Oh, I can't wait to go." Because it's that. So
right. Yeah.
She and the other wife can sit and talk and watch a little bit of the game.
Right.
Go, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then go back up and sit down and watch it from a distance. She's like, that I enjoy a lot.
Yep.
Like, I love that. I just don't want to sit. Because her thing is, I don't understand the game enough to really get super excited about it during a game.
Right.
But if I'm glancing at it,
right,
I don't have to be so I can do other stuff.
Yep.
It's fascinating.
And that's where we're going. And so even here locally, Legion FC, they get that. They this year I don't know if you had the opportunity to go to a game, but they had the Good People deck, which was behind, and that was always the first thing to sell out. And that's a standing room only place where you go up there and you hang out, and you got your Good People beer up there, and it's socializing and yeah. Oh, by the way, there's a soccer game going on.
Yeah.
Even it's behind the goal, so it's not even a very good location, but yet that's the first thing to sell out.
It makes me think, and wrap up with you because you've been so generous with your time. But I had a poker guy tell me who works in Vegas that said that they have determined that gambling is number 4 on the list for people going to Vegas now. It's shows, hotels, dining, or somewhere in that order, and then gambling.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think Vegas figured out very early on.
Yeah,
it's not the hardcore gamblers.
Yep. Well, similar to that, we did a project two or 3 years ago for minor league baseball, headquartered down in St. Pete, 160 minor league baseball teams around the country. Their research shows that, I can't remember the statistics, it was insanely high. It was like over 80% of people who go to a minor league baseball game the following day cannot tell you who won the game.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Which tells you why they're there. They're not there for the game. Yeah. They're there because of the social experience. And
I went to drink and a baseball game broke out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so, so again, that's the direction we're moving. And so back to the whole analytic piece, this is where we come in. We take, and particularly we do a lot with social data to really help those sport properties understand how to create those kind of social environments within the stadium that makes people want to go to the games. And so that's because it's all changing. Yeah. And data is helping to create those great experiences, that are different from the way they were 10 years ago.
Thank you for doing this.
No, this has been fun. I love talking about this.
Absolutely. Make sure you check them out, Samford. All the links are connected on our website. If you check out Darin White, follow him on Twitter. Got great information, great content, marketing material, thoughts, perspectives, everything.